Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Dream Chasers Ground Zero. I'm here with Raquel Borras. Raquel, would you mind telling us a little bit about your background and what you were like at Ground Zero?
Absolutely. Now, first of all, can I point out that we're literally at ground zero with this podcast? Like, this is the inaugural episode. So like, you're starting at ground zero right now. So that's really exciting. So I want to point that out, not to make you nervous. But about myself. So I'm in a position right now where I started my own business last year, January 2020, doing personal branding consulting. And I've recently pivoted. I'm kind of, I guess, technically a YouTuber now, and I'm doing a YouTube channel called Raq the Boat. So I'm working on that. But so I'm also at ground zero with this YouTube channel. So I love that we're experiencing ground zero together, Aaron.
Yeah, for sure. And I know starting that in January of last year, not knowing what was coming had to be quite the task.
Yes, but I will tell you this, and I had mentioned before we started recording that I started at ground zero at age 35. And what I mean by that is I got married young at 24, had my first child at 25, then my second at 28, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And then at age 35, I got divorced. No career prior to that. So I needed to get out into the workforce. And I started as a receptionist, and then I was a hostess. I did all those, jobs that people you have to have that experience, right? I think everyone needs to be in the restaurant industry at some point or do clerical work. And so, I started there and I just kind of worked my way up, and that's when I started on LinkedIn. So there was definitely a point in my life where I had to figure things out on my own. So I think this is great that you're doing this because you're helping others that are starting at square one and they don't really even know where to start. So I love that you're doing this and sharing some insight, because I literally didn't have anybody else to really help me because I wasn't surrounded by those people. I was surrounded by other stay-at-home moms, essentially, who were still married. So I had to figure it out on my own.
Yeah, I mean, some of those stay-at-home moms are some of the strongest people you'll meet, though. I know from at least some of my personal experience that.
Yeah, I mean, they're mom. What is it? Mompreneurs. I forget how you pronounce it, but the mom entrepreneurs. Yeah, but at the time when I got divorced, I just wasn't surrounded by those type of women. A lot of them are those type of women now, but at the time we were just all kind of like figuring how to just be moms. We were all young moms. So it was definitely interesting trying to figure it out. But I will tell you this: a decade later, I'm still learning. It's always a process. Obviously there's certain things that I think I've done pretty well, and that's building relationships and networking and connecting with the right people. That's definitely something that is extremely important for those of you that are starting out in any industry with whatever you're doing. If you're starting a podcast like Aaron, or if you're starting a business, or even just a job. You don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur, just in general at whatever company you're at. Building those relationships are huge. And I feel like that has gotten to me, has gotten to where I'm at. A lot of it has to do with just the people that I knew.
Yeah, for sure. I know for me specifically, just building relationships is what has gotten me this far. It only took me one connection to Adam Carswell, to any of you who are already familiar with the Dream Chasers brand and whatnot. After connecting with him through a school event here, he's actually an alumni at the university that I go to.
That's right.
So I connected to him one time through that, followed up, fortune is in the follow-up, followed up with him. And then from there, we just, connected regularly. It turned into internship conversations. Then it turned into, hey, I want you to come work for me. Help me out in this regard. Help me out with this. And now I'm almost like I wouldn't say right-hand man, but I'm right there, and I'm very active in a lot of the things that he's doing. I mean, I do a lot of the media production work that you see through his brand and his reposting and things. So, I mean, it was just one little thing, and then it just snowballed. And that's, honestly, what Ground Zero is all about.
Yeah, but see how powerful that relationship is. And, that's how you and I got to meet. Because Adam has a lot of connections, same thing. I have a lot of connections too. So when people reach out to me that are newer, just in college, for instance, or have just graduated and they'll reach out, I'm really open to connecting because everybody needs a little bit of help here and there as well. I mean, I'm not established in what I do, so I still reach out to connections that I know and, hey, can you help me with this? So that's another thing too, is you kind of have to just put your ego aside at times and be willing to ask for help and be willing to admit, like, hey, I'm new at this, just like with you, Aaron, like this is your first time doing a podcast, and everyone has to start somewhere. And when you start out, it's not going to be perfect. Heck, it'll never be perfect, right? You'll always be learning and try to improve on what you're doing, but you pulled the trigger, and good for you. Because not many people will do that. And the fact that you're fearless in reaching out to folks, and like Adam, that's the key too. Like I do that too, where there are people in my network that I think, oh gosh, you know what? They're probably out of my league. But at the same time, it doesn't hurt to just try and just reach out. And I have to tell you that pretty much every person that I've reached out to that I thought was out of my league, we're good friends now. So that's another thing too, is I think, with social media right now, there's that perception that a lot of people have of other people. Oh, wow, they must be so much bigger than what they really are. Like someone like myself, I laugh all the time because people think, wow, you're so busy, you're killing it, you're out there everywhere. I'm like, yeah, you don't see the 5 hours that I'm on my couch binging a Netflix series or binging, a podcast, because I'm not putting that out there on social media. I mean, I personally will, though. I'm very transparent about how it is a lot of work and how it might seem like I'm doing extremely well and I'm really successful. It doesn't necessarily translate into money, for instance. Like I'm not financially stable right now. I mean, I have my dad helping me out with my bills. I'm very open about that because I did start a business right before the pandemic. And the last thing people are going to hire is a personal branding strategist when they're just trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills, if they're going to be able to stay in business or if they're going to still have their job. So that's why for me, I had to figure something out. And that's when I started realizing, okay, I need to kind of step it up. Like Adam says, take it to the next level. So for me, taking it to the next level meant giving out free content, basically free advice on branding, all of those things. And because of that, more and more people wanted to ask for my insight and asked me to be on their podcasts. And with that, more and more people asked to be, for me to be on their podcast. So then it just kind of, I got more visibility and global visibility because of the internet. And that really helped. So it's not, I think what happens is when people start their own business or they're starting from ground zero, they think that they have to know everything and already have everything in place. And that's not the case. There's baby steps. It's a process. It's showing up every day. It's being consistent. It's putting in the work. And when I mean, consistent and showing up every day, it's like with social media, I show up every day on social media. I'm sure some people get annoyed by it. I get annoyed by it. I'm over myself sometimes, but I know that that's really important. If I want to get anywhere and if I want to do what I'm doing, especially with my YouTube channel and, monetize it, I got to put in the work. I got to be out there, and it is difficult. I'm not going to lie. So all of you out there, there's no secret sauce. I've been on LinkedIn for a good 8 years.
Yeah. I mean, being a part of Adam's production process and things has really also helped me see how much work really goes on behind the scenes of, things as simple as this. I mean, everybody just thinks, I guess there's some sort of stigma that it's just people just press record and it's just on. I mean, and they think it just comes so easy, and it's not like that. Even either just talking to him or some other people that I've connected with since meeting him, it's you don't realize how long it took them to get to the point where they look that comfortable on camera, where they sound that comfortable in those conversations. And that's where I kind of just had to swallow the pill and just say, you got to start somewhere. You're never going to get to that point. So that's why we just kind of decided we got to press record someday. And Adam kind of challenged me. He's like, you're going to set this up. You're going to do all this yourself. And I'm just trying to fit that bill,
Yeah, and there's so many of us that are at ground zero with something, especially now. I think so many people are pivoting and trying new things because of what is happening in this world right now. And so if anything, you're going to have plenty of guests to be able to have come on. It's just, once again, being consistent with it, especially a podcast, because there are so many people out there that are starting podcast. So it's just making sure that you're being consistent with it, and putting that time into it, and being good about promoting it as well. I think a lot of people forget. So like, for instance, for myself, with my YouTube channel, I post an episode that I have with one of the kids, and the episode's maybe 45 minutes or so. What I do is I take like a minute or less, a little snippet, something, that'll kind of stop people in their tracks and want to watch more. I'll take that little snippet, I'll repurpose it, I'll add some music to it, maybe like a sticker or a GIF, and a thumbnail picture. And I go ahead and throw it on my LinkedIn. I throw it on Instagram, Facebook. But not only do I throw it on there as posts to drive traffic over to my YouTube, but I utilize LinkedIn stories, Instagram stories, and Facebook stories. So then I go ahead and take that and take 15 seconds of that and put it on the stories. Now, that takes time. Like I will do the episode, and then pretty much the rest of the day is focusing on getting it out there and having it be seen by people so that people even know that it exists. So just like with this, you're going to start having to get good at tagging, posting, like you got to make sure that when you post this, I'm tagged on it. I can't tell you how many times I've been on people's podcasts and they'll post it and they'll never tell me that they posted it. They'll never tag me on anything. They won't tell me. I'm like, you just missed out on a huge opportunity for me to promote the podcast, me as a guest. I mean, come on, let's be honest. Like, yeah, I'm not, super vain, but if I'm on a podcast, I want people to hear me on it. And so then obviously I would want to promote it on my network. And I have a pretty large network, with LinkedIn, I've got 22,000 connections. And that's my first degree network. There's still a second degree network on LinkedIn that people aren't aware about. Like I have 1.2 million people on my second degree network. So it's the power of where it could go, right? But if you're not willing to put the effort or even educate yourself on that, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. So it's like little things like that too that are really important at ground zero.
Absolutely. And at least me being familiar with you personally a little bit, like I know that like you're considered like the social media rock star that you are. So like I know like that obviously that's a connection that I need to leverage, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like having you on as a first guest was perfect. First of all, because I know that how well you can carry on a conversation, which will help me with my inexperience in doing these things. Plus, doing things as simple as tagging you gets this out to your network as well as mine, as well as Adam's, technically, because I operate this under him. Yes. But still, it just multiplies, and all of a sudden you have all kinds of coverage and a lot more people know about it than you even realize.
Yeah, and that's being smart. It's not in any way being selfish or using the person. No, like you are just being really intelligent and being strategic and being intentional. And that's part of being successful and running something that's going to end up out there and people getting to know what it is. So you're being very smart. So good for you. I mean, those are the type of things like what you just mentioned that people should be aware of. I do the same thing. I know who's out there and has a large network and has a lot of engagement. And, I've been lucky enough to be friends with a lot of them. And so when we do things like, for instance, I'm going to be going out to San Diego, and one of my connections, Michael Ray, is huge on LinkedIn and has a ton of engagement. And he and I are going to finally meet for the first time, and we're like family. We are already planning on doing like a Zoom video together where we're going to do like a back to Cali type, lip sync thing. And I'm going to post it on my network, post it on his, and we're leveraging each other's network and each other's engagement to get people excited about the fact that he and I are going to get to meet up in San Diego and do random acts of kindness for his Smile Project Louisville. So already we're thinking like, how can we leverage?
Yeah, for sure. And touching back on one of the things you mentioned earlier, it's just that one thing I've noticed since sort of coming into the scene, either just seeing connections that Adam's made or just kind of being behind the scenes of all of it, is, sort of like you mentioned earlier, that there's like a stigma that people who are popular on social media are like a step above where we are. But like one thing that I've come to realize is that like, I mean, and like you hear it all the time, but you don't realize it until you actually interact with these people.
Yeah.
That they're people too.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, and like Adam especially, like I met with him a couple times before I actually knew everything that he had going on. And then afterwards, I was like, whoa, like this guy's like involved in a lot of stuff. Like, and yet he makes time to talk to me, you know what I mean?
But he's a really genuine guy. And there's a lot of people out there like him that I met him maybe 4 years ago. So before, this was when he was still in Northern Virginia. It was before he had done, and maybe he had just started Dream Chasers. You know, he was still just kind of doing the real estate thing. And, you know, now he's taking it to the next level with the mastermind and doing in the webinars. And I mean, he's really doing extremely well, but he's the same Adam that I knew. And that's what's so fantastic about someone like him and about a lot of people out there. There are a couple people, like for instance, this guy, Brian Schulman, he is considered like the godfather of LinkedIn video and LinkedIn Live on LinkedIn, but he's one of the most grounded, humble people I've ever met. And he's in San Diego too, and we're going to get to meet, but like, I'm so glad that I reached out to him before I really realized what he was doing. Like I knew he was big, but someone's like, hey, reach out to him. Like you guys are already connected. He's in San Diego. I think you guys would get along great. Just do it. So our first Zoom call was us dancing to Cali Love with Tupac, and we had snap filters, and that was our first interaction ever. That was in November, and now we're like family. I'm going to get to meet him. And I tell him all the time, like, it's a good thing that he is who he is, because he is a big deal. He's been in Forbes. He's like, he did a global summit yesterday, was a keynote speaker, all these things. But it's like, once again, like you said earlier, you're like, hey, do you want me to do a bio or an intro? I'm like, yeah, that's just titles, right? Like, who cares about what my title is? If I'm a crappy human being, it doesn't matter that I'm the CEO of True to You branding. You know what I mean? Like, who cares if I'm an awful person? Like, that's why I just laugh, because titles are just titles. It's really about the person, you know, how they contribute and how they show up.
Absolutely.
And how they treat others.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things that I was kind of hoping to accomplish by, you know, starting this podcast, getting things out. Is, I mean, that like a lot of the content that's out there now isn't necessarily geared to young professionals. It's geared towards starting professionals. So it's people that already have that base of knowledge that are ready to say, make their first deal, or, you know what I mean, make their first post, they're people that are already ready to go. Yeah. But I was trying to gear this towards the kids that, I mean, are sitting there and they dream of all these things, but they have no clue what to do next. And I mean, and you've already touched on one of the most powerful things you can do, and it's just network. Yeah. Just meet people. And I mean, and that's one that, like, it seems very daunting at first, because I can tell you from personal experience that for a while, and still sometimes, networking can be exhausting. Yeah. If you're introverted in any way whatsoever. I mean, and some people can just talk, and it,
like
and
me.
It just, I didn't want to point fingers, but but I mean, some people it comes to easier than others. I mean, and then for some people, just, I mean, reaching out to someone is a huge step. Yeah. But I mean, you have to start somewhere, and that's what Ground Zero is all about. But and you never know which one of those little decisions could be your launch pad.
And not only that, like, take advantage. It's a pandemic. Everybody's doing Zoom, so you don't have to worry about going to an actual happy hour or networking event, because those are the ones for introverts that scare the crap out of them, right? Because you're the one that actually has to initiate the conversation. You have to go up to someone, or someone has to come up to you, and then it's that awkward, like, hey, what's your name? What do you do? And it's like, ugh. I mean, I'm an extrovert. I love people and I love to talk to people, but I even hate that whole part of it, right? So with Zoom calls, it's more intentional. You know that you only have a certain amount of time with that person. It's like you can do a little bit of research if they're on Google, or if they have that LinkedIn profile, you can kind of see what they do. So you already have in mind of, like, we don't have to go through the formalities of, like, who do you work for? Like, what's your position? You pretty much know all of that. So when you get on a Zoom call, you can just start getting to know the person. And that's something that that's one thing that I tell people all the time, Aaron, because this happens to me a lot. I get people reaching out to me via LinkedIn, like, hey, let's get on a Zoom call. I would love to get to know you. But a lot of them start out with, like, giving me a sales pitch already. And I'm like, whoa. And I've stopped, and a lot of these guys are young. And I tell them from the start, I'm like, hold up right there. Like, do not even bother giving me a sales pitch. Don't even bother giving me a presentation. Like, that's not how this relationship is going to build. Like, we need to get to know each other. Like, so most of the time when I do a Zoom call the first time around, we rarely ever talk about business. I want to know how I'm going to connect with that person. So I want to know their interests. I want to know what they're like as a person, because then if I like that person and I feel like I can trust them, then I'm going to send them business and work with them. I think too many of the young people out there forget that aspect of it. They forget that there has to be a human to human connection. There has to be a level of like emotional connection before someone really is going to do business with you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that's really key, is if you do network, you do the Zoom call, just put the business part aside, like see how that person and you like see what common ground you have, because there's been people that I have like connected with over the stupidest things where you're like, wait, you love Star Wars, I love Star Wars, did you know, and then suddenly you have that like mutual bond, and then it just is like an easier way to then start talking about business down the road of like, hey, by the way, what is it that you do? And I already know I really like you. And I know that we really have a lot of stuff in common. So yeah, like I'll send you something, or I'll send you a client, or I'll refer you to someone I know.
Yeah. And I mean, that's definitely one of the biggest parts, of networking, is networking the right way.
Yes.
Like, it seems simple to reach out to someone and say like, hey, let's set up a Zoom call, and then, we'll get to know each other. But really, like you're saying, like, you're not going on there to pitch yourself. Like, you will have a tremendous amount more success if you just get on there, and talk to them as a person. Yeah. Like the first time you and I spoke, like we spoke about like your podcast was, just kicking off then. Like you were, I don't even think you had it started yet. It was
I hadn't started the YouTube channel yet.
Right. So like you were close, but you were telling me about those ideas. And obviously that was before it had kicked off and everything. And we talked about things like mental health. We talked about, like random things. We didn't talk about the work experience that I have so far, and that's why, like, I feel, that our connection is more of like I would call it second level right now friendship, but maybe more eventually. Yeah. But like it's things like that you build more of a valuable connection than just someone that you can say you met with one time.
Yeah, and that's really important because not a lot of people are being taught that, right? So what happens is you have a lot of kids, and I say kids because I'm 45, so everyone that's coming out of college is a kid. My son just turned 20 yesterday, so he's a sophomore in college. He's at Virginia Tech, and he's on LinkedIn. The frat, they make them all get on LinkedIn because they understand the power of beginning to network. Well, a lot of them come out of college and they don't know what they're supposed to do. So they go to networking events, or they get on a Zoom call and they think that that's what they have to be. They have to be super professional, and that's what they have to do. So it's like they don't know any better. So that's why it's so important that you're doing this, because you're going to slowly educate the right way to do it. And it'll change and evolve, right? Because like a year ago, we didn't have everybody on Zoom. So now people are learning like Zoom etiquette, for instance, because before people didn't understand it. It really is important to have your video camera on. If you're doing a Zoom networking event or a conference, and you really want to get to know people, have your camera on, folks. Like let people see you. And if that means to change your background because your house is messy or you're in a messy bedroom, then change the virtual background just like you have it, right? Like little things like that I think that people just don't realize it makes a difference.
Yeah, I can tell you a funny story about getting my background together.
Yeah.
This is technically my second interview call, but the first that we've actually done under the name of the podcast and for, the podcast. Yeah. I did a call a couple weeks ago. I did an interview for Adam to build for some marketing and stuff, to build up a little bit of hype for an upcoming webinar. So then we have a desk in my living room, and that's where I had my studio at then. I had to hang my green screen from the ceiling and finagle it all these fancy ways. I had to make special stands to put lights up on, do all this stuff. Well, then the interview itself, I feel like went fine. The interview went well. I feel like there was good content there and things, but I didn't realize until after the interview, I'm going back through it and editing it and doing these things.
Yeah.
And I picked up an unreal amount of background noise from other people in the house. My camera was backwards. So the logos that I had on the screen were facing the wrong way. Like, this was a nightmare for me at the time, because I was like, Adam gives me this big responsibility of doing an interview for him. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like, he's giving me this big responsibility that, like, I can have a good chance to, like, crush this, you know what I mean? Build that even more trust with him. And the logo's backwards. The sound's terrible. Like, it was a nightmare. But, gosh. I mean, that just shows that, I mean, like,
yeah,
you gotta start somewhere.
You laugh at it. I'm laughing at it. It's not any, doesn't make you any less of an interviewer, or doesn't give you any less credibility. If anything, it just makes you human. And if people are going to relate to that even more, they're going to, because then it's going to allow them, it's going to give them permission to be like, okay, you know what? Let me just start out. And if it doesn't come out perfect, then that's okay. Because I think that's another thing too, is that too many people think it has to start out perfect. It doesn't. It's not going to. Like, the reality of it is, it's not going to be, something's going to go wrong. Like, even when I was started out with my episodes with the kids, I mean, some of the audio is awful, and that was on my end. It wasn't the kids. It was my fault. Right. But, oh, well, like, I'm trying to figure it out. And so I think that that's really important to share, because then everybody else will feel like, okay, then I can do this too. Because I think that's what was happening too for a really long time, is you have people that are very successful. They weren't really willing to share their failures, or willing to share like stuff that didn't work out, because for whatever reason, it maybe made them feel less than, or some kind of imposter syndrome. I don't know. Like, for me, I'm the opposite. Like, I'd rather tell you all the crap that I, effed up on, and the fact that I was a train wreck and a hot mess. Like, for me, like, that's where I think it's fun to share, like, my successes of like, ooh, and I've done this and I got this award and that award. Like, I've gotten a couple awards. I haven't shared that with anybody, because who cares? Like, nobody really cares about that part. They want to know how I got there. Like, what did I have to do in order to receive a certain award? And that's,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where a lot of people are missing out the opportunity on sharing those stories.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've come to realize over time too. I mean, being in on interviews that Adam's done, or some of these webinars and things. I mean, like, one of the things, I was definitely in one of his webinars that, like, it really hit me, like, sitting there watching the guy presenting, and he was just telling you, like, by not starting where you are, by waiting for that perfect moment, by waiting until you have everything in line, you're robbing all the viewers of exactly what they want to see.
Yeah.
I mean, and when he said that, it really just kind of hit me. I mean, and it still took me a long time after that to finally come around to the idea of actually
behind the scenes, right? People love behind the scenes. They love bloopers. They love all of that. At least I do. So that's why I post a lot of that, because I mean, that's what I want to know. I don't care about like all the done up stuff at the end. Like, I want to know the parts where you literally tripped and fell on your face.
Yeah. I mean, and personally, like, that makes me think of like job interviews now. Like,
yeah.
Like, when you walk into a job interview, you think you have to be your absolute best self. You know what I mean? You have to tell them about all these experiences that you did, all your awards, all of those things. But like, to me, that's not how it should be. Like, I feel like how I look on paper is not who I am.
Oh gosh, I look awful on paper. Like, I tell people, I know that. Like, that's why for me, relationships and who you know that's what's helped me, because I have yet to actually have a resume that I had to send like blindly to a company. Every company that I have worked for up until I started my own business has been because I knew someone there, and they knew me, and they knew that I had drive, that I was ambitious, that I was, 100, like I put in 100%, like I'm a hard worker and organize all of those things, because they got to know me in that way. On paper, my experience wouldn't be that extensive. And then to put on paper like, hey, I'm really smart and I'm really organized and I'm really, everybody's gonna put that, right? But I feel like my personality is what helps too. So, and I know that. So I'm the type of person where I'm like, just get me in front of that person and I'll do it, and watch, it'll work. But it's getting in front of that person. That's like where the work lies in. And then once in front of that person, like the CEO of a company or the owner of a company, I don't get intimidated. That's where I thrive, because I know and I have enough self-awareness to understand that, like, hey, if we can connect emotionally, if I can have some common ground, if I can ask that person questions, if I can, all of those things, I mean, I don't know. It's like natural for me. So that's why it's helped me with just kind of navigating the corporate world, if you will. But not everybody has that, I guess, natural sense of understanding human beings. That's just one of my strengths. And because I know it's one of my strengths, I use it. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. So those strengths, capitalize on those strengths. Like,
yeah. And I mean, if anybody listening gets anything from what you just said, it's that if you have ambition and if you have drive, and I mean, if you're just willing to work harder than the person next to you, I mean, other than that, all you have to know is one person and you can have a job, you can have success. Like, yeah. I know there was points of, being in school where I was just like, I'll sit awake, at night wondering like if I'm going to be able to find a job after I graduate. Like, I'm going to have this degree that I can do what with? Like, but I mean, like, just going off of what you just said, I mean, all you have to do is be willing to work. Like, and other than that, like, it's just network. Like, if you know someone, you can have a job. Like, it's that simple. Like,
no, but you're right. The work, you got to put in the work. You have to put in the time and energy. Like, I think too many people think that it's going to come easy. It's not. I mean, and we might make it look easy. I know that I make it look fun. Believe me, I have people that are adults that are like, I want to be like you when I grow up. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But you also don't see the back end. Like I said, with the Instagram stories, the social media tagging, doing the research on my computer, reading, listening to podcasts. Like, a lot of people aren't seeing that either. I mean, I'm putting that energy and that work into it, and I'm, envisioning what it is that I want to do. And so I'm making it happen. I think that's a big misconception too, is that like, it's just going to kind of happen overnight. It really isn't. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, you're 100% right.
Everyone's like, oh shoot. It doesn't? There's no secret like recipe? Nope.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where, that's just definitely one of the things that I was hoping to accomplish by, starting this project. I mean, is that like not enough kids my age, which I'm 20, by the way, for anybody who's wanting to know.
You're a kid. You're 20. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So you're my son's age. Holy smokes. I could be your mom. Great.
Don't be ashamed. But anyway, I mean, just like something that I know that that a lot of people my age don't realize is just if I'm being honest, I completely lost my thought. It's gone. I have no clue what it was.
See, and then you know what? That happens to me all the time. Do you know how many times I'm like in mid thought? I'm like, wait, what was the question again? Well, I was just saying how like a lot of people think that it just happens overnight and there's like some secret recipe to it, but there really isn't. And then you were saying how at age 20 and then you lost your thought.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, what a lot of people my age, like at least kids that I know, don't realize is how what's the word, approachable, professionals and things are in the industries that you're interested in are, whether it be through LinkedIn or through just some sort of connection. I mean, the one thing that I've noticed for sure in my endeavors is, I mean, I have not been told no one time setting up a call to just either learn about an industry, learn about a person. I've not been told no one time.
Yeah. And you're respectful.
You just have to take that step.
Yeah. And you do in a very respectful way. I can already tell that, you have manners, you have respect, all of those things. You don't feel entitled, because that's really important as well, is like to realize that, you're going to have to work your way to a certain point. You're going to have to put in that work. It just, you just have to show respect. Like, I still try to be as respectful as I possibly can to my colleagues and to I don't ever get to a point of like, oh, I'm 45, 46. So I'm good. Like, no, yeah. See, like, just like how you lost your train of thought, like, there goes mine. You're welcome.
No, that's okay. I mean, and that's just, one other thing that like, definitely one of the things I want to utilize by, starting this podcast is just that, I mean, everyone has a ground zero.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's one of the things that like, especially like someone like you're saying that like people your age want to be like you when you grow up. Like she wasn't always there.
No, and I'm about to start at ground zero again because I'm taking my channel, my Raq the Boat show. I'm taking it over to a live streaming platform, which is going to live stream on social media platforms plus Apple TV, Roku, Peacock, and it's a live stream. So I'm going to have to figure out how to produce a live stream because I've never done live. I'm going to have to come up with a segment. I mean, so it is scary. I'm definitely going to be out of my comfort zone. It's definitely taking it to the next level. It's definitely going to be challenging. So yeah, I'm going to be back at ground zero. And that's the thing too, is you have to be willing to kind of get back at ground zero every so often. Like it's going to happen throughout your lifetime. I mean, that's like Adam, ground zero with his webinars. I mean, he had to start somewhere with that. And that was recent for him too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's much younger than I am. And so he's going to have plenty of ground zeros. You're going to have a bunch. Like we're going to have multiple ground zeros. It doesn't like, it's very rare that you only have one.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing that, people also don't realize is that ground zero is one of the best places you can be.
Yeah.
Because you can't go down from
right?
there. Like all you have to do is find one small task and start doing it consistently. And you will gain traction faster than you realize. Like one thing will come right after another, and next thing you know, you're already somewhere you never thought you'd be.
Yeah.
I mean, it just comes down to putting the work in and consistently putting the work in.
Yeah. I mean, those are the key things, putting in the work and being consistent. And, I think, generations have passed and it's still the same with the work ethic. You got to have that work ethic. You got to have the drive. You got to, and then have the self-awareness to understand like the people around you and the people you're working with and your audience too. Cause that's another thing now that more and more people are on social media and are these kind of like, influencers or celebrities or whatever. I think a lot of them don't have enough self-awareness too to understand like what they're putting out there and how that's affecting the people that are following them and watching what they're doing. I think that's a huge responsibility too, is, be cognizant of what you're saying, of what content you're putting out there. Is it making others watch it and feel like crap, or is it making other people be inspired and feel like, okay, this is a great thing. I feel great about this. And I feel positive, or they're inspiring me to do better, inspiring me to be a better human being, as opposed to the opposite. So there's so many things, there's so many elements out there, but I think at the end of the day, it's always going to be the same thing. The work, the consistency,
Yeah. And I mean, it's honestly really hard to wrap your head around the fact that it's that simple. Like, I mean, because everything seems so complicated, but when it really comes down to it, that's it.
Yeah, we complicate things as human beings, just even like with diet and exercise, right? Like everybody knows what they have to do in order to lose weight. Like it's pretty simple what you have to do, but for whatever reason, everybody wants the hack. They want the quick fix, the diet, all of those things. And then we complicate it. It's like, it's really not that complicated. It's like, just eat less calories and move more,
Yeah.
And don't eat crap all the time. Like, what healthy food is, what is good for you, veggies and fruits, you know what I mean? Like the potato chips are like, we all know that that's not the most healthiest snack, but yet we still like are looking to find something that's going to be different. I don't know. And I feel like it's like kind of the same way when it comes to business and social media and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, you're right on the money there.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to start winding it down here. If you could think back to ground zero Raquel,
Mm-hmm.
what would you tell her to more or less just help you realize some of the things that you've realized today?
I would tell her a few things. I think the first would be to trust myself. I didn't start trusting myself just until recently, to be honest. Like I would have told myself, like, just really trust yourself, trust your intuition, trust your heart, like that inner voice. And I think another thing that I would have told myself, and I keep telling myself that today too, is trust the process. Like this is my journey. This is the way my life is supposed to unfold. So I have to trust that whatever comes at me, whether it sucks or not, is meant to happen, and I'm meant to learn something from it. And that's the thing, is anytime something shitty, crappy happens to you, there's a lesson to take away from it. Instead of looking at it as like, oh, woe's me, I can't believe this happened to me. Like, oh my gosh, like, no, look at it and be like, okay, why did this happen? Did I do something? Like, what am I supposed to learn here? And so now that's how when things like that happen to me, I don't get upset anymore. I'm like, all right, what am I learning? And let's move on. And so I think those are the biggest things that I would tell myself.
Absolutely. That's gold. You hit it right on the head.
Yay.
So,
winner.
Let's get a final thank you for tuning in to Dream Chasers Ground Zero, episode 1. Hopefully many more to come. Always remember, there's nowhere to go from here but up.